The screaming started 3 minutes before the wedding ceremony. Not from the bride. Not from the guests in their silk robes and golden masks. The screaming came from beneath them. From under the marble floor they stood upon. From a girl they had buried alive 6 years ago and forgotten. Her name was Parisa. And she was clawing at the stones above her head because she could smell him. Her mate. Her fated one. Standing directly above her prison. About to marry another woman. The Alpha Prince Dariush of the Rostam bloodline pressed his hand to his chest. Something was wrong. His wolf was howling inside him, thrashing against his ribs, demanding he stop. Demanding he listen. "Do you take Princess Marek as your eternal mate?" the elder asked. Dariush opened his mouth to speak. And the floor beneath the altar cracked. "If you're already hooked and you want to see what happens when that floor breaks open, do me a favor. Like this video right now and follow so you don't miss a single moment. And tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you a hug. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Now let me take you back. 6 years before this ceremony. To the night everything changed. To the night they buried her. The Ardesher estate sat on the eastern edge of the Rostam territory like a wound that wouldn't heal. Once it had been magnificent. Once it had housed one of the most powerful Beta families in the realm. Once Parisa's mother had walked through its rose gardens with her head held high, beloved by everyone who knew her. But that was before she died giving birth to Parisa. And Lord Ardesher never let his daughter forget it. "You killed her," he would say, his voice flat as old copper. "You came into this world screaming, and you stole her last breath to do it." Parisa learned to make herself small, to move through hallways like smoke, to eat her meals in the kitchen with the servants because her presence at the family table made her father's new wife, Lady Roshanak, lose her appetite. She was 16 when the inspection came. Every 5 years, the Alpha King sent representatives to assess the noble families, their lands, their resources, their unmated daughters of breeding age. Parisa watched from behind the stable doors as the royal carriages arrived. Black and silver, the colors of the Rostam bloodline. Her heart hammered against her ribs, not from fear but from something else. Something her wolf couldn't explain. She needed to get closer. It was a stupid idea. Her stepmother had made it explicitly clear that Parisa was to stay out of sight during the inspection. The Ardesher family would present only Shiren and Gulnar, Lady Roshanak's daughters from her first marriage. Beautiful girls. Proper girls. Girls who hadn't murdered their mothers by being born. But Parisa's legs carried her forward anyway. Through the servants' passage. Up the narrow stairs. Onto the balcony that overlooked the great hall where her father was receiving the inspection party. She pressed herself against the carved wooden screen and peered through. There were 4 of them. 3 advisors in formal robes. 1. Parisa's breath stopped. He was young. Perhaps 18 or 19. Tall and broad-shouldered, with black hair that fell across his forehead and eyes the color of winter storms. He stood slightly apart from the others, his arms crossed. His expression one of profound boredom. But there was nothing boring about him. Even from this distance, Parisa could feel the power radiating off him in waves. Alpha power. The kind that made her wolf want to bare her throat and whimper. "Prince Dariush," her father was saying. His voice carrying that oily quality it got when he was trying to impress someone important. "What an unexpected honor. We had no idea the Alpha King's own son would be conducting this inspection personally." The prince didn't smile. "My father believes I should learn how our territory actually functions. Apparently sitting in council meetings isn't sufficient education." One of the advisors cleared his throat. "If we might begin with the household census, Lord Ardesher. Our records indicate you have 3 daughters of." 2, Lord Ardesher said quickly. Too quickly. 2 daughters, Shiren and Gulnar. They're waiting in the solar for presentation. The prince's eyes narrowed. "Your census filing from 6 years ago lists 3 female offspring." Parisa's heart clenched. She shouldn't have been surprised that they kept such detailed records. The royal family knew everything about the noble houses. Every birth, every death, every shameful secret they tried to hide. A clerical error, Lady Roshanak said smoothly, gliding forward. She was beautiful in the way of women who worked very hard at it. All careful paint and structured silk. We've been meaning to have it corrected. Have you? The prince's tone made it clear he didn't believe her. Strange kind of error. Adding a child that doesn't exist. My lord. Show me your household, Prince Dariush said. It wasn't a request. Parisa pulled back from the screen, her pulse racing. She needed to get back to the stables. She needed to hide. If they found her, if they asked questions about why she was being concealed, she turned to run. And slammed directly into Lady Roshanak's maid Zara. The woman's eyes went wide, then narrow, then satisfied in a way that made Parisa's blood turn cold. Well, well, Zara breathed. The little rat has come out of hiding. Please. Parisa's voice was barely a whisper. Please, I'll go back. I won't cause any trouble. Just let me. Zara grabbed her arm with fingers like iron. Oh no, girl. You've been trouble since the day you were born. Let's see what the prince thinks of the Ardeshir family's little secret, shall we? No. But Zara was already dragging her down the stairs. The great hall went silent when they entered. Parisa kept her eyes on the floor, shame burning through her like acid. She was dressed in servant's clothing, a rough linen dress that had been washed so many times it was more gray than brown. Her hair was tangled. Her feet were bare. This was how the royal prince would see her. This was how everyone would see her. Lord Ardeshir, Zara announced, her voice ringing with false confusion. I found this girl hiding in the servants' corridor. She says she's your daughter, but surely that can't be right. You told the prince you only have two. The silence stretched. Parisa forced herself to look up. Her father's face had gone the color of old cheese. Lady Roshanak looked like she wanted to murder someone. Probably Parisa. Shiren and Gulnar, who had emerged from the solar at the commotion, were exchanging gleeful glances. And the prince was staring at her. Not with disgust, not with pity, with something that looked almost like recognition. Like he was seeing someone he'd been searching for without knowing he was looking. His wolf, buried deep beneath the surface, opened one eye and stretched. What's your name? He asked. Parisa swallowed. Parisa, my lord. Parisa Ardeshir. The clerical error has a name, the prince said flatly. His gaze shifted to Lord Ardeshir. Care to explain, my lord, why you attempted to hide one of your daughters from a royal inspection? She's not. Lord Ardeshir fumbled for words. That is to say, she's not suitable for presentation. Her mother died bearing her. She's cursed. Ill-fated. It would be an insult to the crown to put her forward as a candidate for. An insult to the crown. The prince's voice dropped to something dangerous. You presume to know what insults us. My lord, I only meant. I know what you meant. Prince Dariush stepped forward, and even though he was several feet away, Parisa felt the air pressure change. This was alpha dominance. This was power that could bring grown men to their knees with a look. You meant to conceal a member of your household from official record. You meant to lie to the crown's representatives. You meant to treat your own daughter as less than a servant in her own home. Lord Ardeshir's face went from cheese-colored to ash-gray. I can explain. Don't bother. The prince turned to one of his advisors. Make a note. The Ardeshir family census has been corrected. 3 daughters. He looked at Parisa again, and something flickered in those storm-colored eyes. The girl will be added to the registry of unmated females of noble blood. Parisa's heart lurched. The registry was how the Alpha King matched suitable candidates to unmated males of status. Being on it meant she could be called for consideration. Could be seen as a person instead of an embarrassment to be hidden away. My lord, Lady Roshanak protested. Surely you can see she's not fit for. I can see many things, Lady Roshanak. The prince's smile didn't reach his eyes. For instance, I can see that you've been underreporting your household income to avoid proper taxation. I can see that your stable houses several horses that don't appear on your registered livestock. And I can see that your daughters are looking at this girl with a particular kind of satisfaction that suggests they've been complicit in her mistreatment. Shiren and Gulnar both flinched. The inspection will continue tomorrow, the prince said. We'll be reviewing your accounts in detail. I suggest you get them in order. He turned to go, then paused. And perhaps find some proper clothing for all three of your daughters. It would be an insult to the crown for any noble house to present its children in servants' rags. He swept out of the hall, his advisors scrambling to follow. Parisa stood frozen in place. She could feel her father's rage building behind her like a storm about to break. Could feel Lady Roshanak's hatred boring into her back. Could feel Shiren and Gulnar's resentment settling around her like a physical weight. But she could also feel something else. Something warm. Something that had flickered to life in her chest when the prince looked at her. Oh, it was a dangerous thing to feel. Hope had always betrayed her before. But this time, maybe this time. The next 3 days were the closest thing to happiness Parisa had ever known. The prince's presence in their home meant that her father and stepmother had to treat her with a basic level of dignity. She was given a real dress, a simple blue linen, but still finer than anything she'd ever worn. She was allowed to eat at the family table. She was even permitted to speak during meals, though Lady Roshanak's lips thinned to invisibility every time she did. But the best part was Prince Dariush himself. He found reasons to speak with her. Small reasons. Inconsequential reasons. Asking her about the history of the estate. Inquiring about the gardens her mother had planted. Actually listening when she answered. "Your wolf," he said on the third evening, catching her alone in the library. "What's she like?" Parisa blinked. No one had ever asked her that before. In her family, her wolf was treated as another symptom of her wrongness. Too strong, too wild, too much like her mother's had been. "She's restless," Parisa said carefully. "She doesn't like being caged." Something passed across the prince's face. Understanding, perhaps. Or recognition. "Neither does mine," he said quietly. They stood there for a moment, surrounded by dusty books and dying light, and Parisa felt her wolf reach toward his. Felt something ancient and powerful stirring between them, trying to click into place like a key in a lock. She was only 16. Too young for a mating bond to fully form. But the foundation was there. The potential. The promise of what could be. "When I leave tomorrow," Prince Dariush said, "I'll speak to my father about you. You shouldn't be in this house. You should be at the academy, with other young wolves your age. Learning. Growing. Becoming who you're meant to be." Parisa's breath caught. "You would do that. For me. I would do many things for you, Parisa Ardesher." His voice was rough. "Honest. I don't entirely understand why yet. But I would." She should have known it couldn't last. That night, after the prince had retired to his guest chambers, Lady Roshanak came to Parisa's room. She brought Shiren and Gulnar with her. And 4 servants strong enough to hold down a struggling girl. "Did you think I didn't see?" Lady Roshanak's voice was venomous calm. "Did you think I didn't notice how he looked at you? How you looked at him?" Parisa struggled against the hands pinning her down. "I didn't do anything. You breathed," her stepmother spat. "You existed. You walked into that hall and you caught his eye. And now he's talking about taking you to the academy. Taking you to the capital. Putting you in a position where you might actually become something. Please. My daughters deserve that future. My daughters who have lived as proper ladies all their lives. Who have trained and studied and prepared for exactly the kind of opportunity you stumbled into by accident." Lady Roshanak leaned close. "They will not lose it to the bastard whelp of a dead woman. I'm not a bastard. My mother and father were mated. I'm legitimate." The slap cracked across her face like lightning. "Your father may have been foolish enough to mate a wild-blooded wolf, Lady Roshanak said coldly. But I am not foolish enough to let her spawn ruin everything I've built. She gestured to the servants. Take her. Parisa screamed. She fought. She called for her wolf, called for help, called for anyone who might hear. But the Ardeshir estate was large, and her voice was small, and the prince's quarters were on the other side of the mansion. They dragged her through the servants' passages, down, 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 to a part of the estate she had never seen before. The basement. No, beneath the basement. There was a door hidden behind a wine rack, stone steps leading into darkness, and at the bottom, a room that smelled of earth and old pain and forgotten things. This was where your father's grandfather punished wolves who displeased him, Lady Roshanak said, following them down with a lamp in her hand. He would lock them in here for weeks at a time. No light, no company, just the dark and their own thoughts. She smiled thinly. Most of them went mad, of course. But you're a special girl, aren't you, Parisa? I'm sure you'll manage. They threw her inside. The door slammed shut. The darkness swallowed her whole. Please. Parisa threw herself against the door. Please don't do this. I'll go away, I'll disappear, I'll never speak to him again. You certainly won't. Lady Roshanak's voice was muffled through the thick wood. Because tomorrow morning, when the prince asks where you are, your father will tell him that you ran away in the night, that you stole money from the household and fled, that you were always an ungrateful, wicked girl, and they're well rid of you. No one will believe that. Everyone will believe that. You're nothing, Parisa. Clerical error, remember. And once the prince is gone, once enough time has passed. Lady Roshanak's laugh was soft and terrible. Well, perhaps in a few years we'll let you out. If you're still alive. If you haven't clawed your own eyes out like the others did. Footsteps ascending the stairs. The glow of lamplight fading. And then nothing but darkness and the sound of Parisa's own ragged breathing. She screamed until her voice gave out. She pounded on the door until her hands bled. She called for her wolf, and her wolf answered, howling inside her with a rage and terror that threatened to tear her apart from the inside. But there was no one to hear. No one to come. No one to save her. Above, in the mansion, Prince Dariush woke in the dead of night with his wolf clawing at his chest. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. He rose from his bed and paced his chambers like a caged animal. The feeling wouldn't leave him, this terrible certainty that something precious was being torn away, that he needed to act, needed to find something, needed to. But find what? The mansion was quiet. The night was still. When he finally gave in and walked the halls, everything seemed perfectly normal. He paused outside the door that led to the family wing, to where Parisa slept. His wolf wanted him to go to her, wanted it with a desperation that felt like dying. But he was a prince, and she was a 16-year-old girl from a minor noble family. And there were rules, proprieties, things that simply weren't done. He would see her in the morning. He would tell her about his plans to help her. Everything would be fine. He went back to bed. And when he woke to learn that Parisa Ardeshir had vanished in the night, that she'd stolen money and run away like the ungrateful wretch she apparently was, his wolf howled with a grief he didn't understand. Find her, he ordered his men. Search everywhere. They searched for weeks, months, but there was no trace of her. It was as if she had never existed at all. Eventually, reluctantly, Prince Dariush let the matter drop. But his wolf never forgot. And somewhere in the darkness beneath the Ardeshir estate, Parisa counted the days by scratching marks into the stone floor with her broken fingernails. She stopped counting at 2190. 6 years in darkness changes a person. At first, Parisa tried to maintain hope. She recited poems her mother had taught her. She sang songs in a broken voice. She did exercises to keep her muscles from atrophying completely. She talked to her wolf, and her wolf talked back, and together they built a tiny fortress of sanity against the crushing weight of the black. Food came twice a day. A slot in the door would open. Tray would slide through. The slot would close. She never saw the face of whoever fed her. Never heard a voice. Just the scrape of metal on metal and then nothing. Sometimes if she pressed her ear to the door, she could hear faint sounds from above. A step. Music. Laughter. Life continuing without her. In the second year she started talking to the walls. In the third year she stopped talking altogether. In the fourth year, her wolf went silent. That was the worst part. The part that nearly broke her. For 16 years, her wolf had been her constant companion. The voice inside her that reminded her she was not alone, that she was part of something larger, that she mattered. And then one day the voice was gone. Parisa lay in the darkness and waited to die. But she didn't die. Her body kept breathing. Her heart kept beating. Her lungs kept pulling in the stale, dusty air. And in the fifth year something strange happened. Her wolf came back. Not gradually, not gently, but all at once, like a thunderclap, like a door being kicked open. Mate, her wolf said. Mate is coming. Parisa, who had not spoken in 2 years, opened her cracked lips and whispered. What? He is coming. I can feel him. Closer now. Closer than he has been in years. Didn't make sense. Parisa had no mate. She was too young when they took her. The bond had never fully formed. The prince had forgotten her. Everyone had forgotten her. But her wolf was insistent, certain, burning with a conviction that slowly, over the months that followed, spread to Parisa herself. Someone was coming. Something was going to change. She just had to survive long enough to see it. In the 6th year something changed. The routine that had governed her existence, the twice-daily meals, the impenetrable silence, was suddenly disrupted. There was noise above her. Real noise. Workers and hammering and shouted orders. Parisa pressed herself to the door, straining to hear. The ceremony hall needs to be finished by the full moon, someone said. Lord Ardesher's orders. The wedding of the century, he's calling it. Wedding. Who's getting married? Another voice asked. Prince Dariush, if you can believe it. After all these years of refusing every match the king suggested, he's finally agreed to take a bride. And Lord Ardesher's stepdaughter is the lucky girl. Parisa's blood turned to ice. Which one? He's got 2, right? Shiren. The older one. Apparently she caught the prince's eye at some ball last year. He's been courting her ever since. No. No. Parisa's wolf surged inside her with sudden, violent fury. His ours. They cannot have him. But they could. They were. Shiren was going to marry the prince. Shiren was going to become the alpha princess. And Parisa was going to rot beneath the ceremony hall while her stepsister claimed a future that should have been. She stopped that thought cold. What should have been didn't matter. Parisa had made peace with her fate years ago. She had no claim to Prince Dariush. No claim to anything. But her wolf didn't care about claims. Her wolf cared about bonds. About the connection that had sparked to life 6 years ago and never truly died. He is coming, her wolf said again. And when he is close enough, when he is directly above us, he will feel us. He will know. He'll feel nothing, Parisa said hoarsely. It's been too long. Whatever might have been between us. The bond does not fade, her wolf snapped. It waits. Endures. And when the time is right. Time is right. Parisa went still. The ceremony hall. They were building it directly above her prison. And if Shiren was marrying the prince there, he would be right above her. Close enough to touch. Close enough to feel. The weeks that followed were agony. Parisa listened to every sound from above, piecing together information like a starving woman gathering crumbs. The wedding would be held on the full moon. 300 guests from across the realm. The Alpha King himself would attend. It would be the social event of the decade. And it would happen in the new ceremony hall. The one they'd built directly over her tomb. Parisa began to prepare. She had been still for too long. Her muscles had weakened. Her body had atrophied. She started exercising again. Slowly at first. Just stretches, just movements to remind her limbs how to work. And more. Lunges. What? Push-ups against the wall. Anything to build back what she'd lost. Her wolf helped. Fed her strength. Fed her purpose. Soon her wolf promised. The day arrived. Even through layers of stone and earth, Parisa could feel it. The vibrations of carriages arriving. The footsteps of hundreds of guests. The pulse of excitement and anticipation that seemed to saturate the very air. She pressed her hands to the ceiling of her prison. Somewhere up there, Prince Dariush was preparing to marry another woman. Somewhere up there, Shiren was primping and preening, getting ready to claim a life she'd helped steal. Somewhere up there, Lord Ardeshir and Lady Roshanak were smiling and accepting congratulations, all while their victim rotted beneath their feet. Patience, her wolf cautioned. Wait for the right moment. The ceremony began at sunset. Parisa knew because she could feel the energy shift, feel the gathered crowd going quiet, feel the music starting, feel the ancient words of the mating ritual being spoken. She closed her eyes and reached for that thin thread of connection that had kept her alive all these years. That gossamer strand that tied her to a man who didn't even know she existed anymore. And she pulled. Prince Dariush stood at the altar and felt his wolf go insane. Not restless. Not uneasy. Completely, absolutely insane. His wolf was howling. Clawing at the inside of his skull. Demanding that he stop, that he run, that he... My lord! The elder performing the ceremony was looking at him with concern. Are you well? Dariush gripped the altar to steady himself. Fine. Continue. But he wasn't fine. His hands were shaking. His wolf was screaming. And there was something pressing against his consciousness. Something that felt like a voice he'd heard before. Like a face he'd tried to forget. Like a promise he'd never been able to keep. Do you, Prince Dariush of the Rostam bloodline, take this woman as your... The word exploded inside his head with such force that he actually staggered. Below. Find her. Find her now. Dariush's eyes snapped to the floor. And for the first time he heard it. Faint. Muffled. But unmistakable. Someone was screaming. Parisa screamed until she thought her lungs would burst. She screamed because her wolf demanded it. Because the bond demanded it. Because after 6 years of silence, she had finally found her voice, and she would not be quiet. She would not be buried. She would not be forgotten. Hear me, she screamed into the void. Hear me, hear me, hear me. Stop. Prince Dariush's voice cracked across the ceremony hall like a whip. Everyone stop. The music died. The guests went silent. Shiren, beautiful in her white gown, turned to him with confusion in her eyes. My lord. What's wrong? Dariush wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the floor. At the polished marble beneath his feet. There's someone under here, he said. What? There's someone. He dropped to his knees, pressing his hands flat against the stone. His wolf was going wild now, straining toward the presence he could finally feel. The presence he should have felt 6 years ago but had been too blind, too bound by propriety too. I can hear them, he breathed. I can feel them. Lord Ardeshir stepped forward, his face carefully composed. My lord, I assure you, there's nothing beneath the ceremony hall but foundation and earth. You must be. Silence. The word carried alpha command. Lord Ardeshir's mouth snapped shut. Dariush closed his eyes, reached down through the stone, followed that golden thread to its source, and found her. Not a stranger, not a mystery, or the girl with wild dark hair and eyes like amber honey. The girl who had appeared before him 6 years ago in servant's rags and set his wolf on fire. The girl who had vanished in the night and haunted his dreams ever since. Parisa. His mate. Alive, his wolf roared. She is alive and she is below and she is ours. Dariush's eyes snapped open. They had shifted to pure wolf gold. Someone bring me a hammer, he said quietly. The crowd stirred with confusion. Shiren stepped toward him. Dariush, darling, I don't understand. A hammer, Dariush repeated. Now. One of his guards rushed forward with a ceremonial staff, heavy, iron-tipped. It would do. Dariush raised the staff above his head and brought it down on the marble floor with every ounce of alpha strength he possessed. The crack was deafening. Stone split. Marble shattered. Guests screamed and scattered. Dariush didn't stop. He brought the staff down again. Again. Lord Ardeshir was shouting something. Lady Roshanak was screaming. But he couldn't hear them over the roar of his wolf, the pounding of his heart, the voice that was getting closer. The floor gave way. And there, in the darkness beneath the ceremony hall, illuminated by the light pouring through the hole he had made, was Parisa. She was barely recognizable. 6 years in darkness had bleached her skin to paper white. Her hair was a matted tangle down her back. Her body was thin, so thin, her bones pressing sharp against her flesh. But her eyes were the same. Amber honey, blazing with a fire that 6 years of imprisonment had not managed to extinguish. She looked up at him, at the prince in his wedding finery, haloed by candlelight, staring down at her with an expression of absolute devastation. "You found me," she whispered. And Prince Dariush of the Rostam bloodline fell to his knees at the edge of the pit and wept. What happened next passed in a blur of chaos and confusion. Dariush jumped into the pit without hesitation, gathering Parisa into his arms like she was made of spun glass. She weighed almost nothing. 6 years of darkness and minimal food had stripped her down to sinew and bone. "I've got you," he kept saying over and over. "I've got you now. I've got you." Parisa couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but press her face into his chest and breathe him in. Her wolf was singing with a joy so intense it hurt, curling around his wolf in a dance that had waited 6 years to begin. "Get her out," Dariush ordered his guards. "Carefully. Don't you dare hurt her." They lifted her from the pit like she was a queen, wrapped her in someone's cloak, tried to shield her eyes from the brightness of the ceremony hall. She had not seen light in 6 years, and even candlelight was blinding. The crowd had gone silent. 300 guests stood frozen in their finery, watching the impossible unfold before them. And in the middle of it all, Shiren stood at the altar in her white wedding gown, her face a mask of dawning horror. "What is this?" she whispered. "What is this? Who is that?" "You know who it is." Dariush's voice was ice and iron. "Don't you dare pretend otherwise." Shiren's mask cracked. Underneath it was something ugly, something afraid. "The ceremony," she said desperately. "We need to finish the ceremony. The guests are watching, my lord." "There will be no ceremony." Dariush climbed out of the pit, his wedding clothes streaked with dirt and dust. He didn't seem to care. "Not today. Not ever. Not with you." "But you knew." The words were quiet, deadly. "You knew she was down there. You knew for 6 years." "I didn't." "Don't." Dariush's eyes flashed gold again. "Don't lie to me. I can smell it on you. The guilt. The fear. You knew, and you said nothing, and you were going to marry me while my mate rotted beneath our feet." The crowd gasped. His mate. The prince had called this broken, skeletal creature his mate. "Seize Lord Ardeshir and Lady Roshanak," Dariush ordered. "And their daughter. All of them. They will answer for what they've done." Guards moved to comply. Lord Ardeshir sputtered. "You can't, the king, this is an outrage." "The outrage is what you did to her." Dariush turned to face the man who had buried his own daughter alive. "The outrage is that she was down there for 6 years while you walked above her, while you took my family's money, while you negotiated a marriage alliance built on lies and torture. She was nothing," Lord Ardeshir spat. "A worthless girl. Curse. She killed her mother. She was born. That's all. She was born, and you couldn't forgive her for it." Dariush's voice dropped to something dangerous. "My father will determine your sentence. But I will tell you this. Whatever mercy you showed her is the mercy you will receive. And from what I've seen, that is very little mercy indeed." The guards dragged them away. Shiren was screaming. Gulner was weeping. Lady Roshanak had gone silent and pale. And Lord Ardeshir. Lord Ardeshir looked at the daughter he had buried, the daughter who had somehow survived, the daughter who was now cradled in the arms of the most powerful prince in the realm. And for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be afraid. The royal healers said it was a miracle she was alive. 6 years in complete darkness. Minimal food. No sunlight, no fresh air, no human contact. By all rights, Parisa should have been dead. Should have been mad. Should have been a hollow shell of a person. But she wasn't. She was weak. She was damaged. Her eyes couldn't handle bright light, and her muscles had atrophied so badly she could barely walk. But she was alive. She was sane. And her wolf, her beautiful, stubborn, unbreakable wolf, had never stopped fighting. How? The head healer asked, genuinely mystified. How did you survive? Parisa looked past him to where Dariush sat in the corner of the healing room. He had refused to leave her side since they'd pulled her from the pit. Had barely eaten, barely slept, barely spoken to anyone except her. I had something to live for, she said quietly. Even when I didn't know what it was. Dariush met her eyes. The bond between them, the bond that had kept her alive, that had screamed loud enough for him to finally hear, pulsed with warmth. Rest now, the healer said gently. You have a long recovery ahead of you. Parisa closed her eyes. For the first time in 6 years, she slept without fear. The weeks that followed were a strange kind of limbo. Parisa was moved to the royal palace, installed in a suite of rooms that were larger than the entire house she'd grown up in. Servants attended her every need. Healers visited daily. Her body slowly, painfully began to remember what it was to be healthy. And through it all, Dariush was there. He brought her flowers from the palace gardens, starting with a single bloom, because she couldn't handle too much color at once. He read to her from books of poetry, his deep voice washing over her like warm water. He held her hand while she learned to walk again, never rushing, never impatient. You don't have to do this, Parisa said one evening, as he helped her navigate the hallway outside her rooms. You have duties, responsibilities. I'm sure there are people who need you more than I do. No one needs me more than you do. Dariush's voice was matter-of-fact. And no one could. You're my mate, Parisa. The other half of my soul. I spent 6 years without you, and I will not spend another moment longer than necessary. We barely knew each other. It was only 3 days. 3 days was enough. He stopped walking, turning to face her. In the soft light of the hallway. His eyes were gray again, but there was gold flickering at the edges. My wolf knew from the moment he saw you. I was just too young and too foolish to understand what he was trying to tell me. And now I understand. He raised her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Now I will spend the rest of my life making up for the years we lost. If you'll let me. Parisa's wolf surged inside her, pressing against the bond with a joy that made her dizzy. I'll let you, she whispered. But healing wasn't simple. During the day, Parisa made progress. She grew stronger. Her eyes adjusted to light. Her muscles remembered their purpose. She began to eat real food, to taste flavors she had forgotten existed. But at night, the darkness came back. She would wake screaming, convinced she was still in that pit. Convinced that the light and the palace and Dariush were all dreams, and the cold stone walls were the only reality. Dariush was there every time. He had taken to sleeping in a chair beside her bed, unwilling to be more than a few feet away when the nightmares came. It's real, he would tell her, gathering her into his arms. I'm real. You're free. You're safe. I can still smell it, she would sob. The dust. The darkness. I can still feel the walls. Then feel me instead. He would press her hand to his chest, over his heart. Feel this. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Slowly, agonizingly, the nightmares began to fade. Not disappear. Never disappear completely, but fade to something manageable. Something survivable. like everything else about her new life. Lord Ardesher's trial was held 2 months after Parisa's rescue. The evidence was damning. The servants who had fed her through the slot testified. The construction workers who had built the ceremony hall over her prison testified. Even Zara, Lady Roshanak's maid, the one who had dragged Parisa from her hiding place all those years ago, testified. She had believed it would only be for a few days. A week at most. She never imagined. No one had imagined. Parisa sat in the gallery, wrapped in a cloak of royal blue, and watched the man who had fathered her face judgment for what he had done. Lord Ardesher did not look at her. Not once. He kept his eyes forward, his face a mask of rigid denial. "This is a misunderstanding," he said when given the chance to speak. The girl was troubled, unstable. "We confined her for her own protection. For 6 years. The Alpha King's voice cut through the hall like a blade. "In a pit beneath your house. With no light, no companionship, no medical care. She was difficult to manage. She was 16 years old. The king's eyes were hard as flint. She was your daughter, your blood. And you buried her alive because she inconvenienced your wife's ambitions." Lord Ardesher had no answer for that. The sentences were handed down swiftly. Lord Ardesher, stripped of his title, his lands, his wealth, imprisoned for life in the dungeons beneath the capital, the same dungeons that would give him a taste of the darkness he had inflicted on his child. Lady Roshanak the same. Shiren, banished from the realm. She would keep her life but nothing else. She would wander the outer territories as a packless wolf, marked by her crimes, unable to return to any civilized land. Gulnar, who had been complicit but young, received a lesser sentence. 10 years of service in the temple, to contemplate her choices and perhaps find redemption. As the guards led them away, Lord Ardesher finally turned to look at his daughter. There was no remorse in his eyes. No regret. Only hatred burning eternal. "You should have died down there," he said. "Like you should have died when you killed your mother." Parisa stood. She walked slowly across the hall, her steps still careful but growing stronger every day. She stopped in front of her father and looked into the face of the man who had tried to destroy her. "But I didn't die," she said quietly. I survived, and I am standing here, and you are going into the dark." She leaned close. "And when you're down there, alone with nothing but the walls and your own thoughts, you will understand. You will finally understand what you did to me." She turned and walked away. She did not look back. With the trial concluded, there was only one matter left to address. The mating bond. "You don't have to rush," the Alpha King told Parisa privately. "What you've been through, no one would blame you for taking time. For making sure this is what you truly want." But Parisa knew what she wanted. Had known since the moment she saw Dariush's face through the hole in the floor, haloed in light like something from a dream. "I've waited long enough," she said. "We both have." The mating ceremony was nothing like the spectacle that had been planned for Shiren. No 300 guests. No elaborate decorations. No political maneuvering. Just Parisa and Dariush, standing in the palace gardens under the light of the full moon, surrounded by the people who actually mattered. The Alpha King and Queen, a handful of trusted friends. The head healer who had brought Parisa back from the edge of death. And Zara, surprisingly, the maid who had betrayed her and then redeemed herself through testimony. "I cannot undo what I did," Zara had said, weeping. "But I can spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." Parisa had forgiven her. It had been surprisingly easy. After everything, after all the pain, she found that carrying hatred took more energy than she had to spare. She would rather spend that energy on love. "Do you take this woman as your mate?" the elder asked Dariush. "To bond with her in body and soul, to protect her and cherish her, to stand beside her through all the days of your life?" "I do." Dariush's voice was steady. "I should have done this 6 years ago. I should have known then what my wolf was telling me. I should have." "You were 18, Parisa interrupted gently. We were both children. We couldn't have known. I should have fought harder. You're fighting now." She reached up and touched his face. "That's what matters." The elder smiled. "And do you, Parisa of the Ardeshir line?" "No, forgive me." He corrected himself. "Do you, Parisa of the Rostam line, take this man as your mate?" Parisa felt something shift inside her at those words. Parisa of the Rostam line. She wasn't an Ardeshir anymore. She belonged to a new family now. A family that wanted her. "I do," she whispered. The bond snapped into place like it had been waiting for this moment all along. Parisa gasped as she felt Dariush's wolf merge with hers. Not overlapping, not consuming, but intertwining. Two souls becoming one. Two halves becoming whole. She could feel everything he felt. His love for her, vast as an ocean. His guilt for not finding her sooner, still sharp despite her reassurances. His determination to spend every day of their lives making her happy. And underneath it all, the steady, unshakable certainty of the mate bond. The knowledge that they were meant for each other. That nothing could separate them again. "My Luna," Dariush breathed and kissed her. Years passed. Parisa grew strong. Not just physically but in every way that mattered. She threw herself into learning. All the things she should have learned at the academy. All the things she had missed in her years of darkness. History. Politics. Combat. Magic. She was a natural at magic, it turned out. The healers theorized that her years in the dark had forced her to develop senses beyond sight, and those senses translated well to the mystical arts. By the time she was 25, she could hold her own against the best mages in the realm. By the time she was 30, she was advising the Alpha King on matters of magical security. And by the time she was 33, when the old king passed and Dariush ascended to the throne, Parisa stood beside him as his Luna, his queen, the most powerful woman in the realm. "How does it feel?" Dariush asked her on the night of their coronation, as they stood on the balcony of the palace and looked out over their kingdom. Parisa considered the question. How did it feel? It felt like standing in sunlight after years of darkness. It felt like breathing clean air after drowning in dust. It felt like coming home after an endless journey. But more than that, it felt earned. She had not been given this life. She had fought for it, bled for it, survived for it. Every moment of her power, her position, her happiness, she had paid for in pain. And that made it precious beyond measure. "It feels like a beginning," she said finally. "Like everything before was just preparation. And now the real story starts." Dariush wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "And what story is that?" Parisa smiled. "I don't know yet. But I can't wait to find out." The darkness never fully left her. There were still nights when she woke gasping, convinced the walls were closing in. Still moments when a shadow fell wrong and her heart seized with unreasonable terror. Still dreams where she was back in that pit, clawing at the stones, screaming for someone who would never come. But she learned to live with it. More than that, she learned to use it. Because the thing about surviving the worst is that nothing else seems quite so frightening anymore. When you've been buried alive and clawed your way back to the surface, ordinary challenges lose their power to intimidate. Political negotiations. She'd faced worse. Hostile foreign powers. She'd faced worse. The judgment of the noble houses, who whispered behind their hands about the Mad Queen, the pit girl, the alpha who mated a prisoner. She'd faced much, much worse. And every time someone tried to use her past against her, Parisa simply smiled and said, "Yes, I spent 6 years in darkness. And here I am anyway. What's your excuse?" She and Dariush had 3 children. The first was a boy, fierce and bold, who inherited his father's gray eyes and his mother's unbreakable will. They named him Cyrus, after the ancient kings. The second was a girl, gentle and clever, who could see things others couldn't and spoke to her wolf from the age of 2. They named her Nahid, after the goddess of the stars. The third was another boy, thoughtful and kind, who preferred books to battles and had a gift for healing. They named him Merdad, which meant gift of love. Parisa watched her children grow and marveled at them daily. They knew her story, of course. Everyone knew her story. But to them, it wasn't a tragedy or a horror. It was proof of their mother's strength. Proof that darkness could not win. Proof that love was worth waiting for. "Tell us again," little Nahid would say at bedtime. "Tell us how father found you." And Parisa would tell the story. The ceremony hall. The cracking floor. The light pouring into her prison after 6 years of black. "He didn't give up," she would say. "Even when everyone told him I was gone. Even when it seemed impossible. His wolf knew I was out there, and he never stopped listening." "And you didn't give up either," Cyrus would add, because he knew this part by heart. "No," Parisa would agree. "I didn't give up either. Even when it seemed hopeless. Even when the darkness tried to swallow me whole. Held on. Because somewhere inside I knew someone was coming. I just had to be there when they arrived." On the 10th anniversary of her coronation, Parisa did something unexpected. She went back. The Ardeshir estate had been seized by the crown after Lord Ardeshir's imprisonment. 4 years it had sat empty, decaying slowly, avoided by everyone who knew its history. Parisa had never returned. Had never wanted to. But something drew her there now. Some need for closure she couldn't quite name. She stood in the overgrown gardens where her mother had once walked. She touched the crumbling walls of the house where she had been born. She descended into the basement, through the hidden door, down the stone steps. Into the pit. It was smaller than she remembered. Course it was. She had been a child when they threw her in here. And she had been near death when they pulled her out. In her memories, the space had grown vast, an endless void of darkness and despair. But in reality it was just a room. A small stone room, perhaps 10 feet by 10 feet. Damp and cold and utterly dark. She had survived here for 6 years. 6 years. In this tiny space. Parisa sank to her knees. The emotions she had kept carefully contained for so long came flooding out. Grief and rage and sorrow and triumph, all tangled together, impossible to separate. She wept. For the girl she had been. For the years she had lost. For the mother she had never known and the father who had tried to destroy her. For every moment of pain and fear and crushing loneliness. But also for this. For the fact that she was here, alive, free, loved. For the mate bond humming in her chest, connecting her to Dariush even across the miles. For her children waiting for her at home. For the kingdom that looked to her as their queen. For the proof that darkness did not win. Could not win. Would never win. When she finally emerged from the pit, the sun was setting. Dariush was waiting for her in the overgrown garden. He had known she needed to do this alone, but he had refused to let her do it entirely without support. "Did you find what you were looking for?" he asked. Parisa walked to him, took his hand, and looked back at the house one last time. "I found closure," she said. "I found peace. And I found proof that I am so much stronger than I ever knew." Dariush kissed her forehead. "You never needed proof of that. I could have told you." "I know," she smiled. "But sometimes you have to see it for yourself." They walked away from the Ardeshir estate together, hand in hand. Behind them, the house continued its slow decay. In front of them, a kingdom waited. And above them, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Points of light in the vastness of space, small but eternal, impossible to extinguish. Just like her. 50 years later, Queen Parisa of the Rostam bloodline passed peacefully in her sleep. She was surrounded by her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. She was holding her mate's hand, as she had held it every night for half a century. Her last words were, "The light was worth waiting for." The kingdom mourned her for a month. Processions wound through every city and village. Songs were sung and stories were told and tears were shed by people who had never even met her but who knew her story by heart. The girl who was buried in darkness. The woman who became a queen. The Luna who proved that no prison could hold a spirit determined to be free. Her tomb was built in the palace gardens. in a spot where the sun shone brightest. No stone could cover it, just a bed of flowers open to the sky, basking in eternal light. And on the marker they carved a simple inscription. She survived. Rose. She reigned. But this is not the end of the story. Stories like this never truly end. They ripple outward, touching other lives, inspiring other hearts. A century later, a young girl in a distant village heard the tale of Queen Parisa for the first time. She was a girl who had known her own darkness. A girl who had been told she was worthless, that she would never amount to anything, that she should simply disappear. And when she heard what the queen had survived, something sparked inside her. She could endure that, the girl thought, then maybe I can endure this. She could rise from that pit, then maybe I can rise too. If darkness couldn't defeat her, then maybe it doesn't have to defeat me. The girl squared her shoulders. She lifted her chin. And she took the first step toward her own story. This is what the tale of Parisa teaches us. That darkness is not forever. That even the deepest pit has a ceiling that can crack. That somewhere someone is coming for you, and if they're not, then you can become the one who comes for yourself. That survival is its own kind of victory. That the light is always worth waiting for. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something, think something, hope for something, then do me a favor. Like this video. Follow for more stories like this one. And drop a comment telling me which part hit you the hardest. Tell me where you're watching from. I want to know what city, what country, what corner of the world this story reached. Drop your location in the comments so I can send you a hug across the miles. And if you're going through your own darkness right now, if you're in your own pit, wondering if anyone will ever find you, see you. Believe in you. And I promise you, the floor will crack. The light will come. Your story is not over. Stay with me. There are so many more stories to tell.